Welcome back to Gold Derby. I'm Christopher Rosen. I'm joined by Joyce Ng. Joyce, good evening, Hollywood phonies. It's time for another episode of Oscars Playback.
I love when you get so excited to do a bit
I
and
love
you
these
tell me
bits.
before we start recording.
I love a bit. Joyce, we're talking about the 1988 Oscars, the 60th annual Academy Awards, a fraught ceremony held during a long, arduous writer's strike.
Yeah. And then several mentions of that during the show.
Yes.
They also tried to book, because obviously they didn't have writers to finish the banter before the ceremony, on April 11th, 1988, back in April.
Back in April on a
And
Monday.
so they tried to book a lot of funny people, comedians to ad-lib
A lot of
on the show.
riffing and
Yeah.
ad libs,
Mhm.
except for John Candy's 8-year-old daughter, who's a fucking scab and wrote him a story, a line. So, uh, absolutely unacceptable behavior from a
Cross the
12-year-old
picket
girl.
line.
Unacceptable. That will not stand. But Robin Williams, Eddie Murphy, John Candy, all riffing. Uh,
Yeah.
some more successfully than others, and I'm sure we'll talk about when we get to Best Picture. Eddie Murphy just dropping incredible truth bombs that maybe had
And
long-lasting
very,
impact.
very accurate too.
Very accurate. Definitely seemed to take the crowd by surprise and had perhaps a longer impact, maybe on his career, right? Or maybe as a Dream Girls winner, perhaps. I don't know. Who can say? He makes even reference to that it won't even matter, which we'll talk about, because it's every 20 years that they award black actors at the Oscars.
Hmm. And he picked a good year too, because he picked 2004, which was when Ray
Yes,
and Million Dollar Baby came out,
correct.
and Jamie Foxx and Morgan Freeman
Yes,
won.
he knew. And that's a common
I mean,
refrain that Spike Lee
he skipped
said.
Denzel because Denzel won in between,
Right.
but still.
And Spike Lee has said that too. That's like every 10 years he gets asked about the Oscars.
Yeah,
And
we've done this before
yeah, we have.
with Howie. So
So yeah, 3 hours and 33 minutes, 8 minutes longer than the prior year. I note that because in his monologue that was unscripted, Chevy Chase says, "As you know right now, there's a writer's strike. So just so you understand, none of this material has been written by me, a guild member, or any other writer, unless done so before in anticipation of a pending strike. In fact, my entire monologue was generously donated by 5 Teamsters, but the strike does present us with some problems and some advantages. It will substantially shorten the show since there will be nothing for anybody to say, and yet it was still 8 minutes longer. That's a fail, I would say."
well, after the red carpet, which had some amazing quotes,
Yes.
like macho heartthrob Tom Selleck, who will present the Animated Short Film Award, and glamorous Jennifer Grey, who starred in Dirty Dancing,
Yes.
a co-producer of Fatal Attraction, beautiful Sherry Lansing,
Yes.
gorgeous Candice Bergen and Louis Malle, and a presenter of the cinematography category, dashing Mel Gibson. They open with a very, very, very long dance number with Dancing Oscars. I have seen this sequence before, but I've never paid attention
I,
really.
I,
And the best part of that whole number was when they pan to the audience and everyone is fucking hates this. Like
so
Michael Douglas biting his lip, Robin Williams just staring to the side like, is this over yet?
we don't talk about this before we do it. Here's what I wrote down. I hope I get it from Chorus Line, I believe, right? Is that right?
Yes, yes. Mhm.
Absolutely fucking interminable. And then I just wrote down crowd shots, LOL, Meryl, Albert Brooks. Everyone looks like they're watching a snuff film.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? At least Meryl looked gorgeous. She looked radiant in that shot, but she was like, holy
Miserable.
fuck. Yeah.
It's a miserable opening number. It's interminable. We haven't even gotten to the Snow White one, which we'll do next week. That is obviously the infamous one in terms of Oscars history. But I got to say, Snow White must have really good PR for that to be like the one that's considered the worst, because this one is awful. Just absolutely deadly, deadly awful.
I it's like I don't even know the what do you think the conversations were like
I think because there
in the
was a
planning of
strike,
this?
they were like, Samuel Golden Jr., who's the producer, was like,
Yes.
fuck it, like, song and dance, like anything not to have writers. What can we do that doesn't have a writer? So this, I guess, I don't know. I don't know what they could have done differently. How about just start the show? In the
Yeah, you
earlier
don't need to
episodes,
do
nothing.
any opening number, but like they've done a lot of these, and we've like seen, in this era, and even before this era too, like there's just a lot of these like opening numbers which we don't really have anymore, because we just there might be like a film bit nowadays, right? But usually just like bring out the host to do
Yeah,
their monologue.
this was deadly. I gotta say, I think they would have, based on the past history of what we've seen this decade, I think this would have happened regardless of the strike, and it would have been just as terrible.
Yeah.
Just a
But yeah, that
brutal.
was that set the tone.
It did. This let's. I don't know. This is a mid Oscars to me, and I enjoy a lot of the winners, and there are actually a lot of great movies, even though I'm not a big Last Emperor guy. But the show itself is tough.
Yeah,
In the
the show is not great, and yeah, this is another um year where there were a lot of great films in 1987 that were not necessarily the ones singled out
so
by the Academy. So
before we'll get into the year in film here, but before we do, I just want to read. This is the opening graph of the New York Times review. Joyce, I'm sure you read this as well.
yes.
When Monday night's Academy Award show followed glimpses of Charlie Chaplin, Laurence Olivier, and Groucho Marx, with the Police Academy star Steve Guttenberg, who presented the Best Documentary Award to a film about the wits of the Algonquin Round Table. It was clear that Oscar is experiencing a serious identity crisis. It is also clear that the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences is its own worst enemy.
Yeah. So before the ceremony,
Yeah.
also in the Times, this was published March 6th by Janet Maslin. She was just
Okay.
venting just about the Oscars.
Go nuts, Janet.
Yeah. So this is the lead. 2 years ago, I had a baby on the night of the Academy Awards, so that made watching the show less painful than usual.
But get her to write Chevy's monologue.
At least there's an element of distraction. Ordinarily, for those of us who make the mistake of taking it seriously, the Oscar telecast is agonizing beyond words, an occasion for seeing mediocrity celebrated and great work overlooked, for watching reputations being made and hearts being broken. And every year, on every morning after, the eternal question is, why should we care? After all, we ourselves will not be one bit more marketable on the strength of last night's win. We will not personally benefit from any box office bonanza. No one who refused to take our phone calls yesterday is apt to return them today, and the press will not rhapsodize about our previously overlooked talents. So what difference does any of this make to our own lives? None at all. And 1 billion viewers worldwide remain hooked. Yeah, very, very applicable today too, as well. And then she goes into the Oscar winners as of late. Of late, there has been another aspect to the Oscar show's appeal. Years ago, the big winner on Oscar night was likely to be something universally admired and obviously deserving. A Godfather, a Lawrence of Arabia, a West Side Story. Even losers had a certain oversized stature. 1970s Best Picture nominees: Airport, Five Easy Pieces, Love Story, MASH, and Patton, the winner, which is often not the case today. In the period ushered in by The Deer Hunter and Ordinary People, ordinary winners have become more common, so much so that in 1984, the Academy bestowed its laurels upon F. Murray Abraham, Dame Peggy Ashcroft, and Dr. Hang S. Noor. Not surprisingly, the ratings hit their nadir that year, and since then, the Academy seems aware of the need for injecting at least a hint of glamour back into proceedings, so there's now some suspense in wondering whether the show, the nominees, or the winners themselves will successfully recall the glittering Hollywood of the past. That may not be the movie's most important function, but Academy, after all, exists for little else.
It's so funny reading that here because in the review after the show, Joyce, the Times, it kind of says that similarly. Aside from emphasizing the low-gloss aspects of today's Hollywood, this year's show revealed Oscar to be a very confused fellow, an academy that bestows most of its honors on The Last Emperor while cheering with noticeably more enthusiasm for Moonstruck. At the same time, ignoring most of the films audiences really cared about in 1987 is an academy being less than candid about its own real preferences. Is this nothing? Literally nothing has changed. Then
Nothing's changed.
we're
And
just
then Janet, she next goes into She writes, there's another kind of suspense that has surfaced in recent years surrounding the schism between the films Academy members generally like and the ones they feel obligated to admire. In the post-Chariots of Fire period, marked by Best Picture winners like Gandhi and Amadeus, as well as the more understandable Out of Africa and Platoon, this gap has grown exceptionally wide. The PBS sensibility that has pervaded Academy taste in recent years runs directly in the face of a known weakness for lowbrow hits like Educating Rita or Moonstruck, which is this year's version. So there's always a question of whether Academy members will follow their hearts or their minds. Only a few recent Best Picture winners like Kramer versus Kramer and perhaps Terms of Endearment have had anything resembling old-fashioned broad-based appeal.
I gotta say, Amadeus Catching Strays in there, when it's obviously better than those other movies, but it is of that ilk, I think is very funny. But nothing there I really disagree with, I think, based on what we've seen. And then you see Last Emperor, Joyce, 9 nominations, 9 wins, 9 times it wins.
Clean sweep.
And then you think of the other nominees here. I'll just read off a bunch, and we'll go through the year in film in the box office. Broadcast News, 7 nominations, not a single win. Moonstruck, 6 nominations, 3 wins. Fatal Attraction, 6 nominations. Empire of the Sun, 6. Hope and Glory, 5. And The Untouchables, 4.
Yeah.
Couldn't make room for any of these other movies to win. Got to give everything to Last Emperor.
Yeah. And then there was also drama with both The Last Emperor and Hope and Glory, which were from Columbia, and they were acquired by David Putnam, who was ousted by the Coca-Cola overlords, which own Columbia. So
Nice.
so you know, we've seen this before, you know, in recent times with corporate restructuring, when, you know, the new boss comes in and then they just don't care about the old guys' babies, right?
Yeah.
So Columbia,
Does that happen still?
yeah, have you heard of David Zaslav?
I gotta look this guy up.
Okay, you can Google it after
Okay.
this.
Okay.
So yeah, so like Columbia just did not care about Last Emperor and Hope and Glory because like they were not behind it. It was David's babies. And they did not give either of them, you know, like the proper backing and, you know, proper theatrical releases. So there was like this whole thing too about like how The Last Emperor, which was doing well in like limited release, could have made so much more money had Columbia actually nurtured it and opened it wide, but they were just being petty because it was David Putnam's movie. So
Classic.
yeah.
So, Joyce, you have the box office here for 87. This is one of my favorite years of box office.
Well, number 1, 3 Men and a Baby, a classic.
So if you're wondering why Tom Selleck and Steve Guttenberg are prominently factoring in these Oscars, there's your answer.
Number 2, Fatal Attraction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Number 3, Beverly Hills Cop 2.
Also great.
Number 4, Good Morning Vietnam. Number 5, Moonstruck. 6, The Untouchables. 7, The Secret of My Success, a Michael J. Fox joint.
I remember it well, Joyce. It had the great "Oh Yeah" song prominently featured.
Number 8, Stakeout, and an Emilio Estevez joint.
Yes.
And also Richard Dreyfuss, but
yes.
More Emilio for me. Number 9, Lethal Weapon.
Yes.
And number 10, one of my faves that I have not seen in a very long time, The Witches of Eastwick.
A George Miller classic that I have not seen in a very long time either. Great. A bunch of good movies on this list.
Yeah.
Love all of these. A lot of them, at least. I love Untouchables. Think it's still great. I was watching.
I love the score. I'm such a sap for that score.
Great score. Great movie. Lethal Weapon is fantastic. Love the first one. Still, Fatal Attraction, obviously great. Fatal Attraction is so good, Joyce. Maybe they should do a TV reboot of it. What do you think?
You mean with an unhinged pool death?
Yeah, maybe that could work. I could see something like that working.
Yeah.
Maybe on like Paramount Plus.
And And should they end the season with a cliffhanger?
Why not, right? They could do that. And maybe we'll have a season 2 of it. I don't know. That just tossing that out there. Maybe that's something that could happen. Beverly Hills Cop 2, great. Love Cop 2.
I haven't
Different
seen
than
that
Cop 1.
in a while either. I haven't seen the most so I the movie I've seen the most recently of this top 10 is Moonstruck, because I watched that again after Olympia Dukakis died 3 years ago.
I just watched it again too. I gotta say, Joyce, not my fave.
I really enjoy Moonstruck. It's not my fave, but it's just like a nice movie to watch, and it's really fun. And I was thinking when I watched it again 3 years ago, I was like, if SAG had existed, this would be a SAG Ensemble winner just for all the dinner scenes.
It feels like definitely a SAG Ensemble winner,
Mhm.
like a David O. Russell type movie that would have won like New York Film Critics Circle Best Picture.
Um, and I mean, like everyone is great in it. I think it's like a really solid, fun movie.
My problem was I just rewatched it here recently, but after watching like all of those 80s Woody movies that we've been talking about, and I was just like, this is like Woody light. It just is not as good as like those other movies. And I don't know. I just didn't love it as much as I remembered.
I don't think it's that similar to Woody's movies, like except for like a bare bones elevator pitch.
Yeah. I guess I also was like the magical realism I wasn't getting into. I don't know. I was just like, I'm just not into it. I know people
You,
really
you
love it,
just you
so
just you just have to suspend your
I
disbelief.
know. They're all good. I loved Nick Cage. Basically, Adam Driver stole Nick Cage's whole shtick for girls.
He's so great. I love him in this. He should have been nominated.
He should have been. So those are the box office movies. I wrote down a bunch of other movies here. This is a fun year because, like, again, like we are saying, this is like a populist year where some really great movies are here and have zero to no chance of ever getting into the Oscars. But some I wrote down. Mannequin.
You would love Mannequin.
I loved it. Oh my God, it was great. Absolutely loved it. I was a big Kim Cattrall fan. Great song. Still a great song.
A classic.
Very deserving, very deserving of all its acclaim. The Sylvester Stallone movie Over the Top, into arm wrestling.
Yeah, I talked about this with Bill Lawrence a couple years ago because
Wow.
we were talking about like the sports movies.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it's a sports movie.
it is.
Yeah.
I wrote down others. We mentioned Lethal Weapon. Sure. I think it's good. I haven't seen any of the Lethal Weapons in a long time,
Same.
but I feel like one was always like this was the era where I'm sure all of them are rated R, but one felt like the most adult, and then 2 and 3 get a little sillier. If that, I mean, 2 actually ends with like
Yeah.
diplomatic immunity and like Riggs almost getting killed. So I guess it's like more serious. But yeah,
We talked about this, how this is like an epidemic with sequels.
yeah,
Like
it
the
gets
first one
sillier
is
and
like
sillier.
grounded and more serious, like the Mighty Ducks.
Yeah, it's definitely just like the Mighty Ducks.
Yes, yeah.
Raising Arizona, never my biggest fave Coen's movie, but obviously like an important foundational movie.
I like that movie. I haven't seen that in a while either, but this was a big year for Nick and Holly Hunter.
Yeah, big year for Holly Hunter.
Huge.
Uh, Evil Dead 2, people like.
Sure.
Not my kind of thing. Hollywood Shuffle, Robert Townsend movie that was spoken very highly of by Cord Jefferson during the American Fiction Oscar run.
Mm-hmm.
Good movie. This one I watched a lot as a kid for some reason. It was on HBO all the time. One of the original HBO specials in my mind. Blind Date, the Blake Edwards movie with Bruce Willis.
I never saw that.
Wow. Don't remember a lot about it. Great poster. Bruce all like kind of harried. John Larroquette and Kim Basinger, I guess, is like the girl who is like, if I remember correctly, the whole plot of the movie is basically like it's like a nightmare date or something, and they're like trying to like compete for her. I don't even remember. I'm gonna Google this, but not now. What if we didn't know? But it was a good
Just
good
Google
time.
it after you Google Zaz.
Right, I got to figure out who David Zaslav is. I got to see who I could email this pitch for Fatal Attraction reboot to at Paramount Plus,
Yeah.
and then I'll do the blind date. Project X, Joyce.
Yeah, I completely forgot about this until I just saw it on the wiki page for 1987, like list of American films in 1987.
Does Project X have a monkey?
Yes, yes, it was about monkeys. They were training monkeys. It was Matthew Broderick and Helen Hunt.
Yeah, an Air Force pilot. Yeah, here's the
Yeah.
log line. An Air Force pilot joins a top secret military experiment involving chimps, but
Yeah.
begins to suspect there might be something more to the mysterious Project X.
Yes. I remember watching this. I don't remember anything about the movie, but I remember like sitting in front of the TV and watching it.
Couldn't remember a single thing about it. I'm just looking at cinematography by Dean Kundi,
I
who
mean,
wrote the Spielberg.
it's by who else is in this? Like a James Horner score?
William Sadler. I mean, I literally Gene Smart is in this, Joyce.
Yeah. Deborah herself.
The great Deborah Vance is in this movie. Anyway, yeah, I agree. I could remember sitting there, but no idea, no
Yeah,
recall
I
at
have
all.
so many memories of myself watching things, but not memories of the film.
Secret of My Success, another one I watched a lot. Love Michael J. Fox. This is like his adult thing.
Mhm.
Kind of like a little bit like fake Working Girl before Working Girl. Uh, Helen Slater is the girl, and then Margaret Whitten, who played the owner in Major League, who I loved, is like the boss's wife. I
I
believe
love Major League.
Michael J. Fox sleeps with the boss's wife. I think that's basically the whole premise of this movie. And they do a great scene to the "Oh yeah" that song.
Yes.
Very very drawn out scene. Directed by Herbert Ross. It's all these, I love when it's like these incredibly ridiculous movies that are directed by like real legendary
But that's
filmmakers.
I feel like we don't get as many of that anymore
No.
nowadays, you know? Like we have so many of those from back in the day, like even in the 90s.
I feel like Fincher was maybe the last guy to do like kind of weird things where you'd be like directed by Dave, like Gone Girl. Maybe 50 years from now, people would be like, "Wait, David Fincher directed Gone Girl? Like what?" Like,
Well,
uh,
you get a lot of that now too when like an auteur, joins Marvel, right?
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Like Sean Levy, maybe Joyce.
Yeah, yeah.
Like those kind of auteurs. Here's a movie again. This is why I'm always suspect of like young people revisiting old things, because then they're like, "Oh, it's great," and the discourse was wrong. The movie Ishtar, Joyce, just sucks. Oh my god! And I know it's
I've
like,
I've never seen that in full.
oh my god, I watched it recently this year because it was part of like Criterion this year did like the Razzies like were stupid to make these movies bad or whatever, and then Ishtar was on the list. Man, I just thought it was so terrible. I know like Elaine May is like having a moment still and like people love her, but this one just does not work in the least. It's absolutely interminable. Uh so sweaty. 90 minutes that feels like 4 hours.
I think I probably just watched like 15 minutes on TV randomly and I never
It
thought it out.
I'll tell you this, it's possible Ishtar is so bad it makes Dustin Hoffman's best picture speech the year before look like awesome.
I mean, he did mention Ishtar
Oof.
in that monologue.
We said Beverly Hills Cop 2, very good. By the time people are watching this, they'll have known what Beverly Hills Cop 4 is like.
Are you gonna watch that?
Reluctantly, I can't say I'm super psyched, but maybe future me will now know it's great. Who knows? The Untouchables I really like. Just a great movie,
Mhm.
so watchable. Always liked it. Here's one that I think is maybe the best movie the entire. There's two movies here I wrote down as the best movies of the entire year. One is Predator, which I've seen
Of course you
50
will.
times. It's absolutely fucking best. It is so good. It's the best version of that kind of movie. Incredible Arnold. Absolutely love it. So big on Predator. Not a Predator fan, Joyce.
No. I have like no opinion on Predator.
Another one I wrote down that I absolutely love is Adventures in Babysitting.
That is my fave of 1987. I
Well,
watched that so many times when I was a kid. And again, it's another one like I haven't seen in literal decades, but I watched it. I recorded it on VHS off TV.
I
So I had so many movies I just recorded off TV.
of course. I'm happy to report, Joyce. I watched it last year, I think, or maybe 2 years ago, and it holds up, and it's even better than you would even remember. It's so good.
So
Elizabeth Shue is amazing.
I did a roundtable in person with Elizabeth Shue like 17 years ago.
Okay.
And I sat next to her and like before it all started, we were just like talking. And then like she mentioned adventures in babysitting herself. So then I just like sort of geeked out on it, but like yeah, you have to play it cool.
You can't
That's
can't
the
let them
thing.
know.
You can't like be a total fanboy about
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
But I was just like, oh, that's one of my faves. So yeah.
Whew, I absolutely love that movie. I think it is so good.
So I feel like that was probably the first time I ever heard of Thor.
Yeah, definitely the first time I ever heard of Thor. Why would you
Yeah.
know Thor otherwise?
No, because I don't read comics.
No.
Um,
Baseball cards. That's what I did.
and so, but then I remember when I first like heard or saw Thor Birch's name, I was like, oh, like that's like Thor. And it turned out she was actually named after Thor. Like she was just because her parents wanted to, if she were a boy, they were going to call her Thor. And they
Oh,
just
and then
added
did
an
Thor up.
A. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I like that.
Mhm.
Here's another one I watched on HBO 50,000 times. I don't know if this one got to your HBO watching or VHS watching. Uh, Dragnet.
Yes, I've seen that.
First time I ever got to see in a movie Christopher Plummer, even before Sound of Music. I think I saw Dragnet. So that's great. That's my level of knowledge of him, and just a great Tom Hanks. Loved.
Great Tom, and Dan
They're
Aykroyd.
great together. This movie was definitely bad. A lot of pagans. This is when I learned about paganism, I believe.
It was an acronym. What was it for?
I'm gonna look at the Wiki page. Hang on, let's see.
Okay, great.
People against goodness and normalcy.
Hmm.
And then if I remember correctly, there's also a great original song or rap that Tom Hanks does. City of Crime, a hip hop rock hybrid performed by Aykroyd and Hanks with choreography by Paula Abdul.
I mean, should have won original song.
Anyway, watch that movie a lot. Probably too much. And then this one I saw in the theater, Joyce. And then when it was on VHS, I ran it back to watch. Fuck, even if future things don't work, 50,000 times. Spaceballs.
Another classic.
Holy shit! Just one of the funniest things I had ever seen to that point in my life.
So, I'm not a big Star Wars person,
No,
but I enjoy Spaceballs.
Spaceballs is definitely my entry point into Mel Brooks movies, and then I went back and like watched all of them as I got older. And Mel Brooks really funny, and Spaceballs was so good. I remember I saw it. Remember on Main Street in Port Washington, there was a movie theater there,
Yes, it's your favorite movie theater.
and it was great. And so we saw it there, and it was so much fun. I remember it was raining, and we went. And we were going to be late, but we made it in time, and I was so excited.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I
Uh,
can't believe you almost missed the previews.
yeah. Who knows what the previews would have been for? What else did I write down? Full Metal Jacket, not one I saw as a kid, but good movie.
No, yeah. Stanley.
I think better considered now than it was then because it was probably I think post Platoon,
Yeah.
not necessarily what people wanted, but the first obviously the first hour I think is like incredible. I think most people would say.
Yeah, and great, Vincent D'Onofrio.
And it's funny that Arlie Ermy wasn't nominated, but I guess we'll talk about because it feels like
Yeah.
such an obvious nomination that I think if you ask people like on the street, was the guy who played the drill sergeant in Full Metal Jacket an Oscar nominee, they would have been like, oh yeah, definitely. And no, he wasn't.
Yeah, like he got the Globe nomination.
Yeah.
Um,
What else did I got? Jaws: The Revenge, we talked about last week with Michael Caine.
I've never seen that.
I saw that one a lot. RoboCop, great movie. This is another 87 classic that I think has aged incredibly well. A new James Bond unveiled this year, The Living Daylights with Timothy Dalton.
I've never seen that one.
I always preferred License to Kill. I think Living Daylights maybe is that the one with Olivia Diabo as the cellist? You wouldn't know.
I think I think the only I've seen all of Sean's Bonds and Pierce's Bronze. I've obviously never seen Daniel's
No.
Bonds. I'm very incomplete in my Bond watching.
And that's what we love about it. I love that. That's great. I never want you to see these Jane and Craig movies ever.
I
Never
never
hear
want to
the
watch. This is my
songs.
thing now. I can never watch
No,
Daniel's Bonds.
no. Monster Squad, Wolfman's Got Nards, classic of that era of my life.
Sure.
They kick him in the balls. Fred Dekker movie. It was really fun. Dirty Dancing, which I really enjoyed. Loved. Had the soundtrack on cassette. Wore that shit out.
Of course you did. Yeah, I like Dirty Dancing. I probably haven't seen that in like 10 years maybe, but it was definitely on TV a lot when I was a kid.
First time I'd ever seen abortion depicted in any media. And I was like, wow, good for them.
I
Nowadays,
remember, I think I had seen Law and Order before I had seen Dirty Dancing. So then I was
interesting.
like, I clocked Jerry Orbach.
Funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, loved Dirty Dancing.
Mhm.
Fatal Attraction, obviously did not see as a youngster. Great movie.
There's a lot of like incredible quotes in Inside Oscar about Fatal Attraction and how they had to change the ending, which, famous story.
Very famous.
Yeah. And then it was like, it was a huge success, obviously. Where is it even here? There's so many things in this year in Inside Oscar. So yeah, so it got like better reviews after because they tested the original ending, in which Glenn frames like Michael Douglas.
Yeah, Alex frames Michael Douglas'
Yeah.
character for murder.
And so it says Marilyn Beck championed it as the year's greatest deterrent to marital infidelity. But co-producer Sherry Lansing thought Fatal Attraction was simply a movie anyone could identify with. Quote, all of us have made a call in the middle of the night that we shouldn't have, she observed. I've never boiled a rabbit, but I've made phone calls. If further proof of the movie's position as what the Los Angeles Times called a socioeconomic phenomenon was needed, Oprah Winfrey, Phil Donahue, and Geraldo Rivera all dedicated shows to victims of, quote, real life fatal attractions. And then the next section is all about Glenn, and it's titled The Most Hated Woman in America.
Wow.
Yeah.
Who's the beautiful Sherry Lansing said that, Joyce?
Yeah, the co-producer.
Got it.
Yeah, beautiful
Got it.
Sherry Lansing.
Got
So,
it.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Let's read the Glenn stuff, I guess, when we get to Glenn. Should we do that? Save that? Put a pin in it?
I mean, like it's not she was basically just defending Alex. So she was
Sure.
just like she defended it because, quote, people get so disturbed about my character they want to get some sort of revenge. She didn't take it personally, telling the New York Times, quote, I'm following on a great tradition. Think of all the great villains Betty Davis and Joan Crawford played. And then Vogue appreciated that tradition, dubbing hers, quote, the most talked about performance of the year, and commenting, quote, Close should be congratulated for making a great career swerve in a very dangerous vehicle.
We'll talk about this when we get to Best Actress.
Mhm.
Great movie, though. So watchable.
Mhm.
Love Michael Douglas. This is a fantastic, one of the best acting.
Yeah, another a great year for Michael Douglas, who
Holy
wins
shit.
Wall Street.
Like Father, Like Son, one of two body swapping movies in this era, followed next year by Vice Versa, which had was another version. This was Kirk Cameron, I believe, and Dudley Moore in Like Father, Like Son.
How do you feel about body swap movies?
Not bad. I'm okay with body swap.
Yeah.
These are good. Like Father, Like Son, and Vice Versa, I watched probably 400 times. Not as much into 17 again, but like the remake.
I love 17 again.
I know. Here's a great one. Princess Bride, Joyce.
So this is another movie where I like, but I don't love it like so many people do.
I've watched it a lot when I was a kid, obviously, and then rewatched it recently. I think it's still great. Just love it. I think it's so funny. Love Billy in it. Great Billy Crystal. Who we'll talk about later, I guess, right? Is this or is that next week? No, this is this week.
Well, he makes his Oscar debut.
Oscar debut.
That's how they labeled the video on YouTube.
Fantastic. And he's great in Princess Bride. Baby Boom. Big into this one, Joyce?
No.
It's not bad. Diane Keaton. Cry Freedom, a movie I remember watching in school.
Of course you did.
With Denzel and Kevin Kline. Directed by Best Director, previous winner, Richard Attenborough.
Yeah.
For Richard.
And Denzel nominated.
Yeah.
So.
A great movie that I came to later in life, Less Than Zero. The quintessential Downey performance.
Yeah, I watched that later too.
Great. I think it's great. I still think it's really good. This one I watched recently on Pluto. My favorite.
Why did you say it like that?
Isn't that Pluto? Would you say
You said Pluto.
Pluto? The Running Man, Joyce. Great year for Arnold. Predator and The Running Man the same year.
I prefer The Running Man.
Wow, I prefer Predator so much. It's so great. Oh my
Just
god.
like I'm not into Predator.
Holy shit, it's so good. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Classic.
Love it, right? Still good. Great Steve. Great John Candy, RIP. The movie Wall Street, which I was so excited to just watch again. I watched again before we did this because I absolutely love Wall Street. It's like one of my favorites. People are not high on it, Joyce. Neither was the Academy.
Well, yeah, he's one of the few Best Actor winners as the sole nomination of his film. You see that more often in Best Actress. But it was just, there's like quotes in Inside Oscar about like how no one thought like Michael Douglas was a good actor. Like a literal quote from Oliver Stone is like he was told that Michael Douglas was not a good actor, and then he was impressed.
I went in and he was like, I was reading up on this, and like Oliver Stone said that literally to Michael Douglas's face, like, you're
Yeah.
bad at this. Wall Street, I find I just absolutely love it. First of all, it's so watchable. I think the editing is great. It looks amazing. And then like it is absolutely like Jesse Armstrong and Aaron Sorkin just like taking notes basically from this for their entire stuff that they've done. Certainly Sorkin, I just feel like was just like, oh shit, like you could just have people write like this and talk like this. This is great. Let's do it.
And it came out right around like the crash.
Very funny that it
It
did,
was
right?
like great timing. It
Yeah.
was like hilarious.
And it's just really, I just think it's like really good. And it's like, man, one of the I somehow was underrated at the time based on the Oscars, I would say. And then still when I looked at Letterboxd after I logged my 4-star review this week, I was like, man, a lot of 3 stars, like, And I'm like, you guys are wrong. This movie is great. I just love it. It's so watchable.
So the costume designer for Wall Street and Fatal Attraction was Ellen Marojnik, who did Oppenheimer.
Mm-hmm.
And Oppie was her first Oscar nomination actually, but she's her thing is like menswear, like that's like her element. So this was one of, Wall Street, one of the premier menswear suits
Great
movies.
menswear suits.
Yeah.
Looks
Like
great.
that's why Christopher Nolan wanted her.
Gordon looks great. Overboard, Joyce, I feel like this is one you liked.
Fantastic film. I haven't seen this in ages either, but great.
Love Kurt
Goldie.
and Goldie is the best. And then broadcast news, which I really enjoy. Not as much as some other people, but I also think it's very good.
I like that movie a lot. I haven't seen that in a while either, but it's definitely like it has like all the things I like and like
Great.
my like sense of humor and like
Yeah.
the subversiveness and satirical nature. But I wouldn't say it's like one of my faves, but I enjoy it.
Yeah, I definitely like the Albert Brooks is freaking fantastic in it, I feel like.
Yeah.
And it has,
And Holly is great. Who replaced Deborah Winger, who dropped out because it was supposed to be a terms reunion.
I feel like we talked about this when we were doing Terms of Endearment, how it maybe would have been different if Deborah was if Deborah was in this,
Would she have won?
Would she have won? I don't know.
But I also feel like it'll be a different kind of performance too.
It would. Broadcast News has a line I think about literally every single day of my life. It must be nice to always believe you know better, to always think you're the smartest person in the room. And then Jane says, no, it's awful. I feel that so deeply in my bones every day, every single day, everything I read. It's so difficult.
James L. Brooks, the foresight, his mind.
His mind. Oh my God. You mentioned some of those great intros of macho heartthrob Tom Selleck for the Oscars as we get into the show here. Did you get Marley Matlin with Mr. Richard Dean Anderson? I forget if he said that one. That was the other one I wrote down.
Oh yeah, they said that too.
They're dating, I guess.
Yeah.
Fuck off, William Hurt from last week.
Well, yeah. Well, they had already broken up.
Yeah.
By then, and he also wasn't there.
He wasn't, though. She gets to say his name.
Yeah, because she presents Best Actor, but he wasn't there. Did you see Care Bears Adventure in Wonderland?
I did not see Care Bears. Care Bears. Care Bears.
You just never watched Care
I was
Bears.
not into the Care Bears. No,
It's so rude.
missed all of these. What other ones
Um,
did you write down?
Can't Buy Me Love, which is also a classic. And I actually, when I went to the American set, this was like 10 years ago. Yeah. Um, so I was in the living room set, and they have like 80s decor. And like this was also anachronistic because this is 87, and this was season 2, I guess, when they were filming. So it was, I think that was set in like 84, but they just have like 80s like magazines on the coffee table, and one of them was like an old People magazine, and Carrie Russell came in, to talk to me. And she sat down, she started like flipping through the magazine, and there was an article about Can't Buy Me Love. And then she just started talking about, she's like, how much she loves that movie and everything, like Patrick Dempsey. And this was also a year before Amanda Peterson died.
Right.
Yeah.
It's funny. I don't know if we already did 89. The movie's at 89 for the 90 Oscars, so we're not going to do it. But my Patrick Dempsey of this era is Loverboy, which I watch all the time. Absolutely love that one.
Can't Buy Me Love, man.
So I was not on Can't Buy Me Love. I was on all my chips on of the contrarian take of like, but what it's like me with like, what great, it actually is a great movie. If Beale Street could talk, Moonlight's good, but like if Beale Street's the one. So for me, the Patrick Dempsey Loverboy is the If Beale Street, to Moonlight being Can't Buy
I
Me
feel
Love.
the same about both Beale Street and Moonlight. So, but it was like when he was cast in Grays, it was like, Can't Buy Me Love.
I know.
Patrick Dempsey.
Uh,
Roxanne, which was Steve Martin's
yeah, never loved this one.
thing. He also basically gave up on trying to get an Oscar nomination. He got some like critics citations, but they asked him about it, and he's like, I don't really care anymore.
Yeah, I never was like that into it. Does Robin Williams pull out a fake nose? Is this who pulls out the fake nose in this show? Doesn't somebody do that? I forget
Yeah.
which presenter.
Yeah, it was at the end.
Yeah.
Um, and The Brave Little Toaster, which I saw in school. It was one of our
Okay.
indoor day movies.
Sure.
La Bamba, which I saw like years later.
Oh, La Bamba, great. I watched that a lot. Remember that part of the reason why I hate flying was that movie. Immediate fear of flying. Like, wait, you could drop fucking planes could fall out of the sky? Not into this. Kill famous
Um,
people? What about us?
you know what? No mercy, man. Famous musicians can die.
They could die. Anybody could die.
When did you hear American Pie?
Probably around this time, right? I don't know. Like, who knows?
After you saw La Bamba.
Yeah. But I love La Bamba. Good. This is a good year. A good movie. Very good movie. Recently on the Criterion Collection, I think. I'm sure somebody out there has it on physical media.
The Lost Boys,
Lost Boys was good.
Stories,
Yeah.
and Kiefer.
Yep.
What else is there? No Way Out.
Yeah, this was that era of Costner like trash. But
Yeah,
good
it
year
was
for Costner.
Gene Hackman,
Yeah.
and Sean Young.
Yes.
A famous flop, Teen Wolf 2, with
Sure. Jason Bateman.
Jason Bateman instead of Michael J.
Right.
Fox.
Definitely seen this one.
And is there anything else? Oh, With Nell and I, which got a lot of play during Richard E. Grant's Oscar
Yes.
run. So I feel like this has if this movie came out now, it would be like a whole lot buzzier. I think it kind of flew under the radar back then.
I'll give you I'll do a couple more because I just was looking. Who's That Girl? Madonna. Not a great film.
Sure.
Summer School with Mark Harmon. You ever see that one? Great time. Great time at the movies, Joyce.
No, I never saw that one.
It made summer school like a lot of fun. Can't imagine it's like that anymore.
You wanted to go to summer school?
It made it look like fun. It's like he's doing like Jeff Winger from Community before Jeff Winger, if I remember correctly. And then Near Dark, which is Catherine Bigelow vampire movie. I'd actually never even seen this now. So I definitely didn't see it then. but I know people like it. So that's it. So should we get into the Oscars, Joyce? And so we mentioned the show happening during a fraught writer strike that won't actually resolve for months.
Yeah. So the mood going into it in terms of like the race was just like was it really just going to be the last emperor?
Yeah.
So, cause basically what happened was last emperor wins, obviously 9 for 9, and it was seen as a race before nominations, but then James L. Brooks was snubbed in Best Director.
Yes. Pretty
Which is
shocking if you
a
think about
death
it.
sentence,
Yeah.
especially back in those days.
Yeah.
So here's an article from the Times after nominations on February 18th. Headline: Surprises in the Academy Award nominations.
Love a surprise. Good headline. Evocative.
It was a year when Hollywood insiders despaired of accurately predicting the Academy Award nominations. And when the nominations were announced, they were even more surprising than expected. The biggest shock for the hundreds of journalists, producers, and press agents at the Academy's headquarters this morning came because the director's branch had not nominated James L. Brooks as Best Director for Broadcast News. The movie, a satirical look at the inner workings of television network news division, got 7 major nominations, including one for Best Picture. David Putnam, who was deposed as head of Columbia Pictures last fall, came up the big winner with 2 movies nominated for Best Picture: Last Emperor and Hope and Glory. Mr. Putnam picked up Bernardo Bertolucci's seemingly uncommercial Last Emperor for distribution after it was turned down by other studios, and both movies reflect his abrasively stated views that in an industry where greed has caused declining standards, audiences will pay money to see quality films. This is the best. The other 2 Best Picture nominees were Fatal Attraction, a cautionary thriller about what can happen to men who cheat on their wives, and Moonstruck, a comedy about love in Brooklyn. So basically, it kind of feels like Last Emperor was a default winner.
So I was just gonna ask you this, like all of of these nominees too, Broadcast News, Fatal Attraction, and Moonstruck are all similarly in like 30,000 feet, studio movies, like big stars, mainstream, and like there's no consent, like there probably was not a consensus there, right? Like you would say between those 3. So like of course, even if Brooks was nominated, I still think Last Emperor would have won as the arty like movie we're supposed to vote for.
Yeah, I think it's like, I mean, I don't think Fatal Attraction was ever going to win. Like, if that was just like, the populist
Right.
nominee, and yeah, I don't think like Moonstruck was ever really in it either, even though obviously it did well with 3 wins. And then, yeah, Broadcast News, that was definitely like a critic's pick. That, I mean, Empire of the Sun also did well, and then was snubbed here. And I don't think like Hope and Glory was really in it either, even though it did well.
Yeah.
But it was like, yeah, it just kind of felt like Last Emperor, which I haven't seen this in ages either. I think is decent. But it's just like one of these like 80s epics.
So in terms of 80s epics, we're talking Gandhi, Last Emperor, Out of Africa. I put those 3 in the same conversation. This might be the best one.
Yeah. I think that's also because of just the inverted nature of the story itself, right?
Yeah.
Which is it's not rags to riches, is the opposite.
But definitely not a movie I'm hot to ever watch again.
No, I've only seen it once.
Yeah.
So
These other ones, though, Broadcast News, Fatal Attraction, Moonstruck, are very watchable. My non lack of enthusiasm for Moonstruck accepted. It's still very watchable.
and then there are some like ceremonies where I'm glad I either wasn't alive for or was too young to have watched, like in this case. So I didn't see the ceremony because I was almost 3. And but when I first read about the ceremony and just seeing that, Last Emperor just went 9 for 9, like, I was just like, that must have been so boring. And obviously I later lived through Lord of the Rings, right? But I vastly prefer Lord of the Rings to The Last
Oh,
Emperor.
yeah.
And I think that was also different because it was part of a trilogy, and so that was the
Yeah.
coronation of
I,
that. But I'm just like wondering, like, and then, having like seen the clips of the show, it's just like it feels like there was no enthusiasm for any of its wins, really.
no. And it's funny. It's obviously a 9 for 9 sweep, but I'm like, because it doesn't win a single acting Oscar, and
Or is nominated for one.
it just doesn't even feel like, it doesn't actually feel like it's dominating. It doesn't actually feel like it's dominating the ceremony that much. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like watching, you're like, oh, like they're winning the tech awards and the craft stuff, but it's like they're cycling through that pretty quickly. And like by the time you get to the end, you're like, oh, okay, I guess it'll win Best Picture and Best Director. Like, it was obviously not a surprise, but I was just like, it doesn't feel as dominant because it doesn't win an acting award and it's not have any nominations there either.
Yeah, I mean, that was the same thing with Lord of the Rings. They didn't get any acting
Right.
nominations, and it's like
Right.
all tech, and then those acting categories were locked too. So like I do think that ceremony was boring, in as like there was no suspense as
Yeah.
to any winners. But I felt like that ceremony was a celebration of the whole trilogy, you know. Whereas
Um,
this is like, okay, we'll just give it to you.
and so we mentioned Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy gives out Best Picture. So we already mentioned the nominees, but just Eddie Murphy gives out Best Picture here. And since the result is kind of boring, and we could, I don't know, I would have picked any of these other movies. I would have definitely picked Fatal Attraction or Broadcast News over Last Emperor if I was relitigating, and we could come up with 5 nominees. Though that was very difficult personally, but just to briefly do Eddie, he comes out and he's like, they invited me to do this, and I didn't really want to do it. They haven't recognized Black people in motion pictures, he said. I'll probably never win an Oscar for saying this, but hey, what the hey? I gotta say it. Actually, I might not be in any trouble because it's about every 20 years we get one. So we ain't due until about 2004. By that time, this will all be blown over. I just feel like we have to be recognized as people. I am going to give this award, but Black people will not ride the caboose of society, and we will not bring up the rear anymore. We want you to recognize us. Eddie, speaking truth to power.
Yeah. And it's also great because in the video they lump director and picture
Yes.
together. Like, picture is not even its own separate video.
It's very weird that they decided to do that. Do you think
Yeah.
it's cause of this or like why?
I don't know. It's weird because like sometimes they have separate videos for just like presenter intros, you know?
Sometimes do separate. This is on YouTube. We're talking. Sometimes they do all these different things, but for this, it's like Best Picture and Best Director. And when
Yeah.
I first put it on, I was like, but why? That's so stupid because I know Eddie does Best Picture and Robin Williams is doing Director. They could easily just separated this out and like done 2 different videos, but they bury the Eddie one, this
Yeah.
trenchant commentary on
And
how the
it's like it's
Oscars are racist,
literally the last video in the
buried,
playlist.
buried in the thing. Uh, I do wonder too, like we already done 1980, we've done the 1990 show, but I'm like, it reminded me a little of like Kim Basinger going up there and like blasting them for not nominating Do the Right Thing. And I'm like, I wonder, this is like definitely of the ones we watch, this is the most outwardly critical, I would say, beyond like Bette Midler being like the songs are terrible and the movies suck. This is the most outwardly critical anybody's ever been in this era that we've done of the Oscars. And I wonder if that like emboldened Kim Basinger to maybe follow suit later and other people maybe later. I don't know. But good for Eddie Murphy. Do you think he lost Dreamgirls because of this? No.
No.
Did he lose because of Norbit?
No.
Did he lose because they didn't like Dreamgirls?
Yes.
Good.
They didn't like Dreamgirls, 8 nominations without Best Picture, and also just his reputation.
Yeah.
So
So if you were not picking Empire of the Sun, what would you pick for this best picture?
Empire of the
not Empire of the Sun.
Sun.
I'm sorry. I'm reading my notes. If you were not picking Last Emperor, what would you pick for best picture?
Of the 5?
Yeah, the 5 that were
I
nominated.
would probably give it to Broadcast News.
Okay.
Of the 5. So.
And then, so for alternates, spoiler alert, I had Empire of the Sun as one. As this.
Yeah, same. Empire of the Sun. I had Untouchables.
I had Untouchables 2.
Cry Freedom.
Yes.
And also My Life as a Dog.
Same. I have no idea if it would get in. Obviously got the directing nomination, but sure.
Well, it was like a success. It also got screenplay,
Yeah.
and yeah, I feel like maybe it could have gone in there, but I mean, I don't know what else.
So that's
But
9.
they're basically covered on like populist hits too, so we're
Right.
not missing any of those like we have been in other ceremonies.
Right. So for the 10th one, I have Au revoir, Les Pons. Au revoir, Les Pons. Yes. But I don't think that would have gotten either. Maybe it would have.
I don't know. It's like.
What was your 10th? Anything?
I mean, I wrote down like The Princess Bride, but I'm like, I don't think at
I had
all.
Princess Bride, and I think Wall Street would have been very deserving, but they just obviously did not consider
It has
Wall
one
Street.
nomination.
How is that possible? I don't understand how it not even get another nomination. But Princess
They
Bride.
have this thing where like we have movies this year from recent Best Director winners,
Yes.
and they're basically just rejecting them outright or under nominating them.
Yes.
You know, like Richard Attenborough, Oliver Stone, James L. Brooks. It's like we gave you your accolades and don't think it's so easy to come back for more.
It does feel like honestly that is what is happening here. Certainly with like Brooks, after he won 3 Oscars, to be like fuck off. Like that's
with his
crazy.
debut. Yeah.
That is crazy. Sure. So best picture. Best director, we mentioned Robin Williams gives out the word and makes a quip about the Oscars. He's completely riffing. Clearly not. He, of all the people, he definitely, I could say without question, not a scab, because there's not a single thing on there that he even came close to writing down, including making sure he got all the nominees. He forgets a nominee. He forgets Adrian Lyne at the end. They have to go back and say it because the crowd's like, whoa, wait.
It's so funny now because nowadays a lot when they throw to the nominees, it's pre-recorded, right? It's like they can't trust
a smart
people
choice.
they can't trust people to read them live.
And he makes a joke about how the winner is going to get a green card, because I think this is the first year all 5 nominees are non-Americans. Is that right?
Yeah. So that was like a thing. You know, we started a decade with the British invasion. Like,
yeah.
So
the nominees are Bernardo Bertolucci for Last Emperor, Adrian Lyne for Fatal Attraction, John Borman for Hope and Glory, Norman Jewison for Moonstruck, and Lasse Hallström for My Life as a Dog.
Yeah. So DGA nominated Steven Spielberg.
Yes.
For Empire of the Sun.
Spielberg and James L. Brooks get the DGA.
Yeah. So then so they were replaced obviously, and then at the NBR ceremony which was on the eve of Oscar nominations, Spielberg presaged, quote, "I have a strong feeling I won't be nominated this year. Just a hunch."
No, good hunch.
So, and then so he was so like obviously Empire of the Sun wasn't in Best Picture either. And then Roger Ebert called, quote, "the biggest snub the bumping of James L. Brooks from Best Director." And then so like My Life as a Dog for Lasse Hallström, they had a lot of posters, so then like they're to promote the movie, so then they just claim like the posters work. But it's also, now we know, like we've always known that this is just what that branch does.
It's a very idiosyncratic branch.
Yeah.
Oh, where are you on Empire of the Sun, Joyce?
I like that movie. Great performance by Christian Bale. Also haven't seen it in really a long time.
Yeah.
But I think it's a nice movie.
I think it's a movie, like I would say, like a good transitional movie for Spielberg.
Yeah. And then so then they ask James L. Brooks about his snub and then how all 5 nominees are non-Americans. And James Brooks refused to criticize the category's international flavor. Quote, I don't think we want to start an America First movement, he said.
Wow.
Let's not bring back Wendell Willkie.
Wow. James L. Brooks, another prescient with his commentary.
Yeah. So, you know, congrats to Bernardo.
His speech, I wrote down, I just actually wrote down the whole thing because I was just like, what a speech here. Hang on, let me find it.
Big nipple.
Thank you. I'm just gonna read this part, and then I think, speaking of prescient, did James L. My take was, wrote down, did James L. Brooks start Gold Derby, Joyce, or the idea of this? I mean, James L. Brooks. Did Bernardo Bertolucci start Gold Derby, or the idea of this? Thank you. It was a very long way down from there. As an Italian, as a European, the Academy Awards has always seemed to me like a distant ceremony. Bong Joon-ho represent here. Something fascinating, very remote. Something I really didn't belong to. Then one day, Last Emperor got 9 nominations and everything changed immediately. I became immediately an Oscar victim. I started to learn the rules of the game and to check the odds. I started the colitis is how it's transcribed, but I think it's maybe colonics and the beta blockers, all these things. I mean, I became an Oscar victim. And then Big Nipple, obviously, is at the end.
Yeah.
They're wonderful. And I was thinking that if New York is the Big Apple, to me, Hollywood tonight is the Big Nipple.
Yeah. He was asked about that backstage, and he was just like, I just mean, like, you're being embraced and nurtured. Sure.
Love this.
Yeah.
Great. Good stuff for him. He should do all the speeches.
Well, he's dead, so he can't.
Can they get an AI of him next year?
I'm sure they will, so.
So you mentioned, so he wins. There's not even, like, none of these other people are even close to, I'd imagine, to winning?
No, not at all. I mean, no. I don't know. There's, like, nothing else to say here, because, I mean, I have a lot of people who were snubbed, like we just mentioned, obviously James and Stephen, and Richard Attenborough, Brian De Palma, Morning Untouchables, you do.
Louis Malle.
Yeah, you could do Stanley Kubrick for Full Metal Jacket if that were gonna be in Best Picture too, or he could have been a lone nominee.
I feel like nowadays people like that movie. Obviously, the footprint of that movie has gotten better, right? Like people, I think, look fondly upon that movie, and for a lot of people, I feel like a lot of, like, this again, back to that Ringer Vietnam podcast, they were talking a lot. I mean, like, I feel like a lot of people watch this movie maybe before they should have, or are exposed to it. Like I definitely was, and like you have a fondness of the movie compared to like older people who watched it then. So I don't know. I think he would have got, if it was now, I think yes, but then no. Rob Reiner for Princess Bride, no way.
They've just, like, never
once took him
touched him
seriously
at all. It's like Mia Farrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I broke down Paul Verhoeven for RoboCop.
Sure.
I think it was nowadays it would be in. And how about Mel Brooks for Spaceballs?
They're just rejecting all Brooks. So
No Brooks allowed. That's like the no homers club on The Simpsons.
yeah, it's just like, I mean, obviously James was nominated for Best Picture and Screenplay, but it's just like that the director's branch, once again,
No.
it's like, try harder next time. It reminds me of, like, like Catherine Bigelow. I mean, that was a crazy year anyway when she was snubbed for Zero Dark 30, and also Ben Affleck too.
This actually does feel like that year though, because it's like very
Yeah,
obvious.
you need a default winner.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, even like Ang Lee won for Life of Pi, and that then went Best Picture, obviously. But it was like, who's gonna win this category now? But like this year we just had a sweeper. So
If this was then, do you think Life of Pi would have also won Best Picture as like the Last Emperor epic type instead of Argo? Maybe.
I don't know, because it was like, because Argo was also like, it won because it was more well liked than Life of Pi, and like Life of Pi got the tech awards. And
I guess I'm just trying to think of it like in placing it in this era, because I'm like, Life of Pi feels very much like these Oscar winners. as Best Picture, and Argo is the movie that would have been in this era that would have not won Best Picture, but then in 20 years later is like, movies we love, that kind of movie. Why don't we make more
Well,
of
I mean, that
those?
was also the preferential ballot, so it's like
Right.
if it's in a field of 5, I mean, like, what movie is it replacing?
Here?
Yeah.
Well, if I mean, I don't know. It would, like, if Life of Pi replaced Last Emperor, Argo replaces Broadcast News, I guess.
Um, I mean, and then you just have to assume they perform at the box office the same way.
I don't know. I
Like
don't know.
that's
It doesn't work. I guess. Okay. Best actor choice. Michael Douglas for Wall Street. It's just an all-time performance. Like immediately iconic and misunderstood. Embraced by the wrong people.
yeah, this is his second Oscar because he won Best Picture for producing Cuckoo's Nest.
Yes. He was only the second person to win now for acting and producing at this point.
And then um his whole like narrative, like for his campaign was just like how Kurt has never won,
Yeah.
you know?
Great speech. I thought his speech was really nice.
Yeah.
Again, it's an all-time performance. I think he's fantastic in the movie. Just absolutely the best. It's so good. So I have no issues with this win. The other nominees were William Hurt for Broadcast News, doesn't show up. Third nomination in a row, right? Because he won 2 years ago for Spider-Woman, then lost for Children of Lesser God and lost for this. Marcello Mastroianni for Dark Eyes. First time we're mentioning that movie. Jack Nicholson for Ironweed. First time we're mentioning that movie. And Robin Williams for Good Morning Vietnam, which I was never that into.
Me either. Yeah, Ironweed was the naiad of this year. It just got the 2 acting nominations. Yeah. This was also the start really of like Meryl getting in for basically anything because she was we'll get to Best Actress, but she was a surprise in Best Actress because she made nothing else. And then I haven't seen Ironweed in ages either, but I like Jack in it.
I think Jack's better in this than he was in Preetzi's Honor, which, like I said, I think is like the nadir of Jack in this era.
And then so this was just kind of like Michael's time, and obviously he also had Fatal Attraction.
Yeah.
So
I definitely think that helped a bit break. I mean, I think he would have won anyway, but like you said, it's so rare that a Best Actor winner gets no other nominations. Like they couldn't even get like a fucking editing nomination or screenplay. Just like absolutely fuck this movie. But we'll give you Best Actor. It's fine.
yeah, and Jack also had a great year because obviously Witches of Eastwick.
Yes.
I think he was a double-sided for both movies at one of the Critics Awards.
Yeah.
So I mean I would have nominated him for Witches of Eastwick instead of Ironweed.
Would he be the lead? I guess he would be.
Yeah, he was Best Actor, yeah.
Yeah.
And then yeah, so like it's Denzel for Cry of Freedom and Albert were also pushed lead, but they obviously were not nominated here. The Academy nominated them in supporting, but the lead push for Denzel was hilarious since he dies halfway through the film.
It is hilarious. He was nominated, I think, lead at the Globes. Is that right? I forget if I wrote that one. He was,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
You could make no, but sure. Albert Brooks, absolutely not. Definitely supporting. Other people I wrote down John Lone for Last Emperor.
Yeah, robbed.
Certainly robbed, right? Feels like it would have been now. I think would have been an obviously no-brainer nomination.
And there would definitely be more discussion too. We need Eddie Murphy back.
Eddie,
talk
come
about,
on in. Let's talk about Eddie.
Yeah,
come back.
I know you talk about Black actors being snubbed, but let's talk about Asian actors too.
Eddie, bring it in. Let's
I
definitely
actually have Christian Bale, but you know, a child, never.
I have Christian Bale. I have double Nicolas Cage for either Moonstruck or Raising Arizona. I think you could fraud him in supporting for Moonstruck, but he's definitely the lead though. So I have Patrick Swayze for Dirty Dancing, which never would happen, but he's great. And I have Charlie Sheen for Wall Street.
He would have never had it. That's like the classic case where like the villain gets in.
He could have been frauded in supporting
or like the protagonist.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's another platoon situation
Yeah.
for him.
Uh,
I also had Steve for Roxanne, which, he was over it by this point.
yeah,
Richard E. Grant for With Now.
sure.
Arlie Emery for Full Metal Jacket, which we talked about.
An actor, not supporting.
Yeah. I mean, I think
Interesting.
I think
He's definitely the lead of the first
either.
hour.
Yeah. It's like you could go either way.
How about Kevin Costner for The Untouchables? Not my fave. It's fine. He's fine. He's just like very perfunctory.
Yeah, it's fine.
Um, yeah. Good list of actors, but none of these. Kevin Kline for Cry Freedom. Did we mention him? No.
Fine.
He'll get his moment coming up. Yeah, Christian Bale would have been fun. Do you think nowadays they would take a child actor in that kind of level of performance more seriously?
I mean, he would just monopolize all the breakthrough awards,
Right.
right? At
Yeah.
the critics awards.
You'd
Yeah, because that
illustrate.
gives people an out to give him that. Obviously these big the major awards don't have breakthrough prizes, so they just don't like young boys. They just like young girls. So I think it would be tough, but a star-making turn for him.
Really good. Really, really good. Best actress choice. Cher for Moonstruck. Nobody more thrilled for Cher than the god Meryl Streep.
You mean Mary Louise?
Or as Cher calls her, Mary Louise.
Besties.
Because they're best friends, and don't you fucking forget it. Other nominees: Glenn Close for Fatal Attraction, Holly Hunter for Broadcast News, Sally Kirkland for Anna, and Meryl Streep for Ironweed. Incredibly strong list of actresses at the top here.
Yeah, so like we said, Meryl was the surprise nomination here, just like Jane Fonda the year before. It's just kind of like name check.
Complete name check.
Basically, and like we said, Out of Accra was her last Best Picture nominee, or her last film for which she was nominated was also a Best Picture nominee until The Post. So this is like starting that streak. Although, there are some great films in between that should have been nominated for Best Picture. I don't think Ironweed was one of them.
No, not one that we're going to be talking about.
And I also don't. I feel like she's kind of borderline here too as a lead. But anyway, so she was like for sure fifth here. Should we talk about Sally Kirkland's personal campaign now?
Yes.
She manifested this nomination. She worked for it.
Yeah.
So, which is why it also killed me when people were so mad about Andrea Riseborough's campaign. Like, all you children have no idea. No. Learn your history. So, yeah, like she FYC'd herself. And there was an interview in 2012 for the 25th anniversary of Anna at your own stopping grounds, the Huffington Post. They talked to Sally to reflect.
Was I involved in this? I think I was there.
I mean, this is not your byline, but it was published February 22nd, 2012. So they talked to her to reminisce about the campaign, and also because that Best Actress race featured Meryl and Glenn again, and Meryl would win. So they ask, how did the Anna campaign begin? Sally says, when I first read the script by Agnieszka Holland, I thought whoever plays this role has a shot at the Oscar. It was just intuition. In the earlier days when we didn't have any publicity, I called friends, including Andy Warhol, who put me on his TV show. Joan Rivers did too. At Cannes, I ran into Rex Reed in an elevator and begged him to see it. He did. And he lent me his quote, Sally Kirkland devours Anna like a raw steak and emerges a major star. Then Norman Mailer gave me a quote. We had pooled enough money for a black and white ad trade campaign. Dale Olsen, Shirley MacLaine's publicist, encouraged me to go to the LA Film Critics Awards. So I wrote them all letters and said, this is a tiny little film, but I hope you'll see it. And I ended up tying with Holly Hunter for that. Then we screened it for the Hollywood Foreign Press, and their response was extraordinary. At the Oscars, there were all these movie stars emerging from their limos, and then there was me. I felt like Cinderella. The greatest part was the feeling to be in the same Oscar category of these women that I was a huge fan of. Meryl, Glenn, Holly Hunter, and Cher, who I used to roller skate with in the 70s.
The best.
And then they asked, how did actors respond to your homemade Oscar campaign? She says, Jenna Rowland said, I voted for you, Sally, but I have to confess something. I never saw the film, but I wanted you to win so much because of that campaign.
More of that. More
Yeah.
people admitting they don't watch this shit and they just vote for their friends and people they like.
We know this is to be true,
I know
but
it's true, but admit it. You know.
so many naive people think it's still a meritocracy
Oh my
here.
god.
Um, and then so then here in Inside Oscar says Sally Kirkland was back on the campaign trail within hours of the nominations. Appearing on talk shows and chumming up again with the press, she made it clear she was no mere flash in the pan because, quote, 3 scripts were messengered to me today as a result of this morning, all starring roles. She went to the Publicist Guild Awards, a special edition of the Hollywood Reporter spotlighted her.
Sure.
You know, if they had roundtables back then, she would be on that and Actors on Actors.
Definitely.
Um,
It would have been like, this is the best performance I've ever seen.
Yeah, she had a 3-page spread in People telling the magazine she wanted to win because, quote, I will be the happiest woman in the world and my belief in God will be reaffirmed. And then she recounted to Cindy Adams, quote, Liza Minnelli brought me an antique enameled gold leaf butterfly pin, which her family had passed from member to member for years. Liza wore it the night she won, and she said, it brings luck. She told me to wear it that night. Well, the luck ran out.
But incredible stuff.
But also, like, I've seen Cher's win like millions of times, the video, but Sally is so nervous throughout that whole presentation.
So do you think Cher should have won?
I mean, I would have personally voted for Holly, but I think Cher's win is fine. Like, I think she's good in the film, and you know, it's another timing thing, just like with Michael Douglas, because she was a previous nominee. She was for Silkwood, you know,
With Mary Louise.
Yeah, Mary Louise, her bestie. She was snubbed from Ask, right? And so it's like this wasn't, unlike for Holly, who was like new, like this wasn't her first acting gig,
Right.
or even her nomination.
Right.
And the movie was a hit and obviously well liked because it won 2 other major awards. So, and I think it's a fun performance. So I don't have an issue with her win. And like everyone is so thrilled for her. And she also gives a great speech. That's a very memorable speech.
It's a memorable speech, and I mean, clearly everyone is thrilled for her. So I definitely don't think there was any way she was going to lose. I think if Holly Hunter is great in broadcast news, I do wonder if Deborah Winger was in that movie, gave the same performance, and is nominated. Does she win because of like having lost previously a couple of times, or does her reputation also prevent her from winning?
I think she would lose.
And then do you think Glenn should have won for playing one of the most iconic villains of the era?
I mean, I would also be fine with Glenn winning just because it would be such an atypical win, but I think just because of, you know, the type of character Alex Forrest is, like, she was never close to it. She was probably 4th.
If Alex Forrest was a man, would Glenn have won?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I figured.
So here's more after nominations. So the stars of broadcast news weren't helping the studio either. William Hurt kept his customary resistance to self-promotion, and Holly Hunter called a moratorium on all publicity once the picture opened because she was otherwise engaged in the LA production of a Sam Shepard play. Cindy Adams was among the columnists who censored her for not behaving like a good nominee.
Wow.
Quote, Holly Hunter, who I am told will be the name for the next 20 years, but whom almost no one heard of an hour ago, is an uptight lady who told even friendly journalists, I will not be interviewed.
Friendly journalists.
Okay,
is that in quotes?
Yeah, well, that's Cindy's entire quote. So,
oh my
Cindy,
god,
hating on someone who just doesn't want to do press or campaign. Holly does not have to campaign for shit. No one needs to campaign for anything. Let people be if they don't want to campaign.
Yeah, good. I guess Cher, Holly Hunter, and we'll go on to win, so we're fine. She's fine. She has an Oscar. It's okay.
Yeah, and the piano, legendary performance.
Yeah.
So but that just cracked me up because it reminds me of like these days now, like less so with journalists or columnists like Cindy, but with fans like crying for actors or their faves to campaign more. I'm like, no one owes you a campaign. Like, it's up to them. And you could see, like, sometimes you don't have a campaign and you win.
Yeah.
So just let them live their lives.
Any other actresses you wrote down?
So like the one of like the other big snubs was like Barbara Streisand for Nuts
Yes.
and Faye Dunaway for Barfly. These other two like big name
Yeah.
headliners.
If you ask me the difference between those two movies, there's zero chance I could tell you what the difference.
It's the same picture.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. That's what I thought. So it's weird to do a remake of the same movie in the same year, but kudos to them for pulling it off.
I mean, you know, we had like the farm movies. Remember the trilogy?
Yeah.
The triptych? Yeah.
Yeah.
Save My Farm.
Yeah.
So all in the same year.
So those two I wrote down. Holly Hunter for Raising Arizona, but no, obviously.
Yeah. Obviously Elizabeth Shue for Adventures in Babysitting.
Clearly would have won in my mind. Diane Keaton for Baby Boom and Bette Midler for Outrageous Fortune.
Sure. I also did Robin Wright for The Princess Bride.
Oh, sure. That could have been cute.
Yeah. Cute.
Best Supporting Actor, Joyce. I will spare you Sean Connery because I really can't do it. Sean Connery for The Untouchables. Huge standing ovation. I wrote down, fuck
he got
yeah.
Huge standing ovation when he comes out to present visual effects.
Yes. And then he wins.
Yes.
Later. People fucking love Sean Connery. With reason, because he's great. And he's great in the movie. I went back, I didn't get to rewatch all of Untouchables, but I was just watching clips. And man, the scene in the church when he's like, that's the Chicago way, like that scene, it's so good with a split diopter and like just all the De Palma shit with Connery. It's just awesome. Like, I'm sure this is a hack sentimental win because they were still doing those.
I think he's good in the movie.
But he's really good in the movie, and like, good for them to have him win. The other nominees were Albert Brooks for Broadcast News, who is fantastic, Morgan Freeman for Street Smart, Vincent Gardenia for Moonstruck, and Denzel for Cry Freedom.
Yes. And you know, every couple of months, especially during Oscar season, that viral clip of Denzel goes around in which he explains to Jamie Foxx like what happened when he lost.
Yes.
To Denzel, like he knew he was gonna lose because Sean got a standing ovation for presenting, and Denzel was like, "Let me get the coats." And then in the clip, he says, you know, like he's leaving, and then he sees like the food getting, you know, being prepared for the governor's ball, and he wants to take a plate because he's leaving with something.
Good.
So
really great clip.
Yeah. So here they talk about how the actors branch ignored the ads hustling Cry Freedom's Denzel Washington and Broadcast News' Albert Brooks as best actor candidates and nominated them for supporting actor. A letter in the Los Angeles Times pondered why it was Brooks and not his screen rival, William Hurt, in the lower category, deducing, quote, "Perhaps it is true that good-looking guys do succeed over the smart and funny ones, but Brooks was grateful to be noticed at all. He admitted to People, quote, if the others had gotten nominated and I didn't, I would have killed myself." The critics' darling Morgan Freeman and Moonstruck's Vincent Gardenia were also in the running, but Sean Connery was expected to wipe out the competition. A publicist informed the Los Angeles Times, quote, "He would have to commit a felony not to win." And then there's something earlier in here about like how Sean Connery, who had hired a public relations firm for Oscar purposes, was the unanimous choice for Best Supporting Actor at NBR. Us Weekly here, disclosed that his campaign was now in full gear. Quote, "Though Connery intensely dislikes doing interviews, he'll allow the agency to trot him out for, quote, select projects, such as the cover of a glossy edition of The Hollywood Reporter and a Barbara Walters special." Yeah. So he was willing to play the game, unlike Holly Hunter.
He also, one of the few winners to mention the strike.
Yes.
A wish to accompany the award, mine would be that we ended the writer's strike.
He also has a great opening line because he was like, friends, family, a few enemies.
Really good.
Yeah.
Good time for Sean Connery because then he's in Last Crusade coming up.
Yes, and then they ask about that backstage, like if he basically like if he feels old and like he's gonna play Harrison Ford's dad. And he's like, no, it's just a movie.
Great. Yeah, great. Untouchable is great. I don't know. I think it's really good. Other people I wrote down. We mentioned Arlie Ermy. I would actually have him here. Vincent D'Onofrio from Full Metal Jacket. I thought here.
Yeah, I have him.
De Niro for Untouchables.
Sure.
Downey for Less Than Zero.
I wrote down Mandy Patinkin for The Princess Bride.
Fantastic. An all-time performance. And I have Martin Sheen for Wall Street. He's great. Love Marty. Anybody else?
No.
And then supporting actress choice, Olympia Dukakis wins for Moonstruck. Shouts out her cousin Michael Dukakis.
Because the New York primary was coming up.
I wrote down the quote. Did you say "Bring it home, Michael," or "Okay, Michael, let's go"?
Yeah, and then he apparently had not seen Moonstruck until the night before. Yeah.
Norma Alejandro for Gabby, a true story, and Archer for Fatal Attraction, and Ramsey for Throw Mama from the Train. Just a completely unhinged nomination and movie that we did not mention. Directed by Danny DeVito, his first film as a director with Billy Crystal, and Anne Southern for The Whales of August. Gotta say, not a lot of strong contenders here.
Yeah, it was always Olympia's. And I mean, she's great in that film, and she has so many like subtle moments. I love like the restaurant scene with her and John Mahoney.
Great.
Yeah. And then so like the whole thing with like Whales of August was like the alleged feud between Lillian Gish and Betty Davis. So columnist Jack Matthews was pleased that the voters, quote, were able to ignore the hype of the Lillian Gish Betty Davis pairing in The Whales of August and vote as Best Supporting Actress nomination for one of the great performances in the film, Anne Southern. The supporting actress nominee called to console Gish, who told her she was actually relieved because, quote, now I won't have to go and lose to Cher.
Wow. Withering.
Yeah.
Did you have anybody else written down? This one I had a hard time with.
I had Kathy Baker for Street Smart.
Okay.
Miranda Richardson for Empire of the Sun, and Joan Chen for The Last Emperor. I also did Vanessa Redgrave for Prick Up Your Ears, a movie we haven't mentioned.
I had Vanessa Redgrave and Joan Chen, who is does a really nice job presenting. I feel like she kind of like
she and John Lone present, and they do a bit.
Good bit.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, and she gets mentioned literally. Bertolucci mentions her specifically in his Oscar acceptance speech. I feel like nowadays she would have absolutely gotten in.
Yeah, I think it also kind of speaks to, I mean, you could like bring like the race aspect into it, but I think it also kind of speaks to and obviously Columbia just ignoring the film, but how defaulty the whole run of the film was like to the Oscars. I think if Columbia had actually backed it and supported it, like she and John probably would have been in the conversation. If more like he got the Globe nomination.
Yeah. If they both got in, I don't think they would have won though.
They would not have won, but like it's like getting them like sometimes the nomination is the win.
I think the nomination is the point. They definitely left nominations on the table here for the 9 for 9.
Yeah, just out of pettiness. So
those are the big awards, and then Last Emperor wins for a screenplay, and so does Moonstruck for John Patrick Shanley, who I wrote down. What did I write down? Doing his palooka routine. That's how he
was so thrilled.
The other thing we didn't mention there on Best Actress. I'm so sorry because I wrote it down. This was good. Paul Newman gives out the award, obviously having won the previous year, and then he gets a huge ovation because he is not. That's the first time they've seen him since his win.
Well, he was not there for the previous 2 ceremonies in which he received an award because he got the honorary Oscar 2 years prior, and then the year before he just didn't go because he was like, I've lost everyone.
Correct. So he comes out now to give out Best Actress to Cher and does a stupid bit with Chevy about like playing pool. And then he has this great line that I wrote down. There's something to be said for comedy.
Was that his ad lib?
I hope so. Otherwise, he's a fucking scab too. Right to the back of the line. Fuck you, Paul Newman. Uh, what else here? So those were the screenplay wins. Sure. I mean, the other, I was just like the Last Emperor stuff. I'm just like, okay. The other nominees are The Dead, John Huston's final film,
Mhm.
Fatal Attraction, Full Metal Jacket, and My Life as a Dog for adapted screenplay.
Yeah,
The-
I would have done like Empire of the Sun for adapted.
yeah,
You could do Roxanne too, like Untouchables. Original, you could do like Raising Arizona.
yeah. Woody Allen, the customary fake Woody Allen nomination here for Radio Days, a movie
Yeah.
we didn't even mention. Hope and Glory, Broadcast News, Au revoir, Les Enfants, and Moonstruck. And Moonstruck wins.
Yeah, nothing for Hope and Glory, just the noms. Even though that was David Putnam's fave, like his number one over Last Emperor.
Is Hope and Glory the prequel to Belfast?
I've never seen it, but sure.
The poster looks like it is, at least. So.
Yeah.
So those are screenplay wins. We could go through the show. I'm just looking at the other winners. Like we said, everything wins. Last Emperor wins everything, including David Byrne winning an Oscar, Joyce, for original score.
Yeah, over Cry Freedom, Empire of the Sun, The Untouchables, and Witches of Eastwick, double noms for John Williams.
Yeah.
And Ennio Morricone obviously did The Untouchables, and still waiting for his statuette here.
I mean, no disrespect to David Byrne, but the Untouchable score, like you mentioned before, really one of the all-time classics. I think should have won here. Would have been an easy one for it to win.
Yeah. And at the 75th Oscars, like they played a montage of the previous acting winners before each category, and the score for each of them was the score of a film that won that category. So for supporting actor, they used the Untouchable scores, and I was like Leo pointing GIF before that existed. So
it's fantastic score. But David Byrne, Oscar winner, that's cool. People who like that, Talking Heads, that's great for them.
yeah, it was three of them. It was him,
Yes.
Kong Su, and Ryuichi Sakamoto.
Yes.
So three winners.
Yes.
There, and then a great winner for original song. I've had the time of my life.
So cannot knock it. Like I said, nothing's gonna stop us now is a fave of mine.
I mean, this is a Diane Warren's first loss. That is a banger, man.
Albert Hammond and Diane Warren. I mean, talk about like pop masters. But I've had time in life is great.
Yeah, a lot of early Diane's early nominations, like you could definitely make very, very strong arguments that she should have won for those.
So do you think she should have won for that over this? I don't know. It's tough. This is a really tough one. A tough choice.
I mean, you can't go wrong with either of them, I don't think.
Shakedown from Beverly Hills Cop and Storybook Love from Princess Bride. And then the Cry Freedom from Cry Freedom. The other nominees.
Yeah.
Cinematography, Last Emperor, Vittorio Storaro wins, I think his third. But a great list of nominees here as well. Michael Bauhaus for Broadcast News. Alan Daviau for Empire of the Sun. Philippe Roosevelt for Hope and Glory. And Haskell Wexler for Matawan. Classic.
Yeah, we didn't mention Harry and the Hendersons, but that won Best Makeup for Rick Baker. Another one for Rick Baker.
Notice that. Another one for him. And Inner Space wins visual effects. Dennis Muren winning again.
Yeah, presented by, as we said, Sean Connery got a standing O. So
other stuff I wrote down about this.
We're just, in the era of like sentimental wins.
There's a lot of sentimental wins, right? It really does. They did not move off of that yet. I guess I would. When do you think the first time the sentimental win thing didn't hold? Was it Lauren Bacall for Mirror Has Two Faces?
I mean, I think that's the most prominent one just because it was so expected. I don't know. I guess like how do you count ones where maybe it was more of a race?
I don't know, but I'm like, that one was so clearly like Lauren Bacall having been to some of these shows and sitting through these fucking people winning.
Like,
I'm sure she was like, how am I losing this?
Yeah, the golden age of Hollywood star.
Yeah.
But then she lost to, the sweeping film.
Right.
So But then I was thinking about like, how, this again in the 80s, like they bring back all these legends, right, to present. And I feel like maybe that's part of it too. Like, we haven't even mentioned them yet, but Audrey Hepburn and Gregory Peck present
So
here.
that's a fantastic moment.
Yeah.
And Gregory Peck stumping for writers. Without writers, there would be no words. Without words, there would be no movies. And without movies, there would not have been 60 glorious years of Academy history. Really makes you think.
hmm
That was great. I love seeing them together. She looked great. So did he.
hmm
Uh,
just a lovely moment. And so I'm just like, like they did like such a great job of well, also this being the 60th anniversary, like their whole thing was they wanted to invite back an actor from all of the best picture winners until then.
yeah.
So that's what they did. And there was this whole thing about, Joan Fontaine and Olivia de Havilland both being there because, they hate each other.
Olivia de Havilland got the first standing ovation of the night, I feel
Yeah.
like.
Just cue the score for Gone with the Wind.
They do a montage. I just wrote down this Oscars 60 montage, all caps rules. I thought the way they did the montage of like the 60 years of Oscars history is like fantastic. Even now, like it was not dated
Yeah,
at
it
all.
was.
I was like, this
I mean,
absolutely rips.
I love a good montage, and I'm really happy they actually uploaded that one
Me
because they
too.
don't upload a lot of these
I know.
montages because of copyright. Like they had a montage for the 90th Oscars, and that was great too.
Yeah,
They used the Love Actually theme there, that one.
good theme.
Yeah, but that was a really long montage they played. Like sometimes I feel like they have montages for no reason, like the previous year when they're just like, here's like Betty Davis and like everything. And I'm like, just like bring her out. And whereas like this, it's like it makes sense to have a montage for the 60th anniversary.
Well, set it right up. Oh, Billy Crystal. We talked about that earlier. It's his first Oscar appearance, Joyce.
Yes.
He comes out for sound. He makes a terrible joke and he says, "Thank you very much. I wrote that before the strike, but bum." And then he does the sound thing and he does like I wrote down Michael Winslow reject stuff where he's like doing he's like like and it's got out. I can't even do it. I'm not Billy Crystal.
Yeah, there were a lot of bits like that. They also did that with like editing too, with
Yeah.
Rob Lowe and Sean Young, where they were just switching words. There was this interminable bit with Pee Wee Herman.
Oh my God. So I wrote that one down too. Let me find the exact quote. What the fuck? Because they bring out Pee Wee Herman, star of Big Top Pee Wee, I guess, for this. And the robot from RoboCop, the machine gun thing that annihilates people, and then RoboCop.
hmm
And the bit is Pee Wee ends up in the air, but the robot is just murdering the crowd. I was like, who thought this thing is shooting people in the crowd? And then RoboCop comes down the aisle and shoots a laser.
Nothing about it made any sense.
Now, I know the writers are on strike, but couldn't RoboCop have been on strike? Can we get him on strike too to prevent that from happening?
I mean, clearly he did not object to this. So
RoboCop, man, stop crossing the picket lines.
that was why this was 3.5 hours.
That was such a terrible bit. I was like, not only is it not funny, it also seems dangerous and like in bad taste that you're gonna murder the audience. Like, what is this?
Yeah. They also brought out Mickey Mouse to present with Tom Selleck.
Yeah, tough. That was a tough beat too, but at least Mickey Mouse is not killing the crowd.
Yeah, and that was, it was cute and it made sense. They did animate a short.
Yeah.
Billy Wilder got the Irving Thalberg Award and Jack Lemmon presented it, but that he it felt like he was like writing a book report because he just explained what the award was and who Irving Thalberg was. I'm like, we don't need those guys.
It was definitely like
Like just like we
AI.
need writers here.
It definitely felt like, yeah, definitely that felt like if it was now, it'd be like AI wrote this part of it. Because if read like AI,
It's like
tell me
writers
what,
on strike, we need AI.
yeah,
Irving Thalberg.
tell me
Please.
what their Thalberg is so I could do it. It's like the Webster's Dictionary defines the Irvin Thalberg Award as. It was funny too because it's like he made movies. He had it was like he never. I don't know. I found like that
And it
all
also
that so
wasn't like
weird.
it's the first instance of the award, you know?
I did say I will say I love Billy Wilder's speech. He tells his long
It's
story
great.
about like coming into like America and stuff, and like it just was a fantastic speech. It was made me sad because I was like, do you remember? Have you ever read that story about like Steven Spielberg tells where like
Yeah,
Billy
last
Wilder?
year for the 30th anniversary of Schindler's, he wanted to make Schindler's List, and as Steven was like,
I'm
I
already
actually have no
making it.
friends.
I'm leaving tomorrow. It's like so sad, but it was like
Yeah, it's
because
so
Billy
sad.
Wilder, if you look at his career, like obviously like just amazing movies, and then just like not I wouldn't say falls off a cliff, but like not as prominent.
No, yeah, and that was the whole thing in that oral history of Schindler's List. Because Stephen said like, like Billy was just coming to him. He's like, I can't get work, man. It's like no one wants my stuff,
Yeah.
you know.
And such an influence obviously on James L. Brooks and Cameron Crowe, like and Spielberg. So I was thinking of that watching that. I was like, man, that's like a really great moment.
I
If you haven't
know.
watched it, you actually should. It's like
Yeah,
really
because
good.
the story he tells is like when he was at the council, trying to come to America, and then they asked like, "What do you do?" And he said, "Write movies." And the guy was like, "Well, write good ones."
Yeah, it's so
And he
good.
did. He did.
He did. He's great, and he also dedicates part of it to I.L. Diamond, who I think was sick at the time.
Yeah, and then he died 10 days
Yeah.
later. Sad.
Uh, and that's it, Joyce. That's the eight. This is our penultimate episode. That was the 88
Yeah,
Oscars. The
we already
60
did driving Miss
Oscars.
Daisy.
We already did Driving Miss Daisy. I don't want to do that one again because these are
No, we
great.
don't need to do any of these again.
But I will maybe go back and listen to it. I don't even remember what we said. But next week we're here with our finale, which is the 61st Oscars, Joyce.
We have Rain Man.
Rain Man, which man, I freaking love Rain Man. So I'm excited for this one. No host except for Snow White and Rob Lowe.
We have double noms for Sigourney Weaver, and she has the dubious honor of being the first one to lose both.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this year. A lot of good stuff. So we'll be back then. So goodbye, Hollywood phonies, I guess I could say, because we started with hello, good evening, Hollywood phonies. All right, Jess, I'll talk to you next week. Bye.